Tell you the truth, reading that this morning, I'm more nervous about that than anything I've done in a long time. You know, it brought back all the memories when I was a kid and growing up, and then those Christmas programs, didn't have any idea what to do, and I generally messed up. And all those things kind of come flooding back on me. So, but the kids did a great job, and it was, you know, it's good that they are a part of that and understand what that's all about. Kids understand sometimes better than we do, I'm afraid. Luke 1, 39 through 45. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zachariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leapt for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." See, faith comes into play there, doesn't it? The red flag on the parking meter was visible. Sure enough, Scott found a souvenir on his windshield. But it wasn't a ticket from West Hollywood, California. Instead, it was a poem that went like this. The meter was red as time had expired. In the rush of the season, we knew you'd be tired. A parking ticket would just make you blue, so in the holiday spirit, this just would not do. So during this time of friendship and good cheer, season's greeting to you and best wishes all year. I never got a ticket like that. What a pleasant surprise, though, when Christmas affects even the meter police. I know it's having a positive effect on society, whether we like to admit it or not. I often don't see it. And we noted last week that there was something about Christmas that lifts our spirits and gives us hope. Our story today begins with a priest named Zachariah and his wife Elizabeth. Now Luke says that both of them were righteous before God, but they had no children, because Elizabeth was barren and both were getting on in years. But one day in the temple, the angel Gabriel appeared to Zachariah and said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zachariah, for your prayers have been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son. You will name him John. He will be great in the sight of the Lord." And then John's birth was overshadowed just 6 months later when the angel Gabriel was sent again by God, this time to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man named Joseph of the house of David. Her name, of course, was Mary. Mary was perplexed by the angel's appearance and by his greeting. And Gabriel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will be conceived in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there will be no end." Mary said to the angel, "Well, how can this be since I'm a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore the child to be born will be holy, and he will be called Son of God." This prophesied the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. So here we have it, folks. Two women, Elizabeth, an older woman married to a priest, and Mary, a teenager engaged to a carpenter, were joined in the bond of an angel's announcement that they each would bear a son. Mary, I want to repeat that. Mary, a teenager. Can you imagine? Two women whose sons were destined to usher in the new era in human history. The two women were relatives, actually. Jesus and John Baptist were cousins in the flesh as well as the spirit. Despite the difference of their ages, however, Mary and Elizabeth were very close. And as soon as Gabriel left her, Mary grabbed up her things and headed to see Elizabeth and Zechariah at their home. Now, folks, this is no leisurely stroll down the park. We're told that the hill country between Nazareth and the place where Elizabeth lived was a really, really bleak, barren place. The eastern slopes were mostly impassable desert, stretching 10 to 15 miles from the highest point of 3,000 feet near Hebron, down to the Dead Sea, the lowest point on earth at 1,300 feet below sea level. You get that picture? The vast wasteland was broken only by imposing cliffs and canyons and a few forts and oases. It was an area perfect for fugitives, rebels, and hermits, and they were there. But certainly not for a pregnant woman, perhaps by herself. Given the difficulties and dangers that the landscape posed, it was obvious, very important to Mary to share her mind-boggling news with Elizabeth. She was the first she went to, and she went to right away. And so with the impetuous and fluid youth, she made that journey. Elizabeth, of course, was overjoyed to see her. She, "Blessed are you among women," she said, "and blessed is the child you will bear. Blessed is she who has believed that what the Lord has said to her will be accomplished." Two women, joined by a promise that God would do great things through them. Elizabeth's words are especially appropriate on this Sunday before Christmas. He said, "Blessed is she who has believed that what the Lord has said to her will be accomplished." This, folks, is one of the few times that a feminine pronoun is used with a blessing in the Bible. Almost universally we read, "Blessed is he," but here we read, "Blessed is she who has believed that what the Lord has said to her will be accomplished." Now, we should note, first of all, that the joy that these two women felt at the news, even though it was probably surprising news, and in some ways, I'm sure, unwanted, but it was news. One was yet unwed, the other her mature years. Neither would have chosen the timing, but both were thrilled at the event. Oh, folks, wouldn't it be great if all children would be greeted with such enthusiasm? Unfortunately, we know better, don't we? One of the great scandals of our society is the prevalence of child abuse. Over 2.7 million cases in America last year alone. Did you get that? One child dies every 4 hours from abuse. I've never understood how anybody could do that to a child. That's just beyond my comprehension. But they do, 2.7 million. The cost to society is staggering. 2 of every 3 prisoners convicted of first-degree murder report childhoods of physical abuse. 80% of all prostitutes report histories of sexual abuse. If you're the product of a loving, happy home, give God thanks every day of your life for it. You may have already received the richest blessing life can give. And if you have children of your own, make these years count. They go by so fast. Sam Levinson tells a wonderful story about the birth of his first child. The first night home, the baby wouldn't stop crying. His wife frantically flipped through the pages of Dr. Spock's book to find out why babies cry and what to do about it. You see a problem right there, doesn't it? Since Spock's book is rather long, the baby cried a long time. Grandma was in the house, but since she had not read the books on childbearing, she wasn't consulted. The baby continued to cry. Finally, Grandma wasn't taking any longer. She said, "Put down the book and pick up the baby." Good advice. Put down the book and pick up the baby. Spend time with your children, especially at Christmas time. Spend time with your children. We have a mistaken idea in our society today that good parents give their children lots of things. It's wrong. In a survey done of 15,000 school children, the question was asked, "What do you think makes a happy home?" That was the question. When the kids answered, they didn't list a big house, fancy cars, new video games, or the source of their happiness. The most frequent given answer was doing things together. Christmas, as I said, is an act of faith, folks. God the Creator becomes an infant in a crib. Who could believe such a mystery? Yet that is the testimony of the people called Christians, us. The hope of the world was laid in a manger in a bed stable in Bethlehem. So simple, so powerful. It reminds me of a story by Dr. Robert Koch that tells about an old woman who was nearing her death and wanted to leave her estate to someone who would use it for good cause. So she went to see a popular televangelist whose show she enjoyed. But the old woman's eyes virtually popped out of her head when she approached the televangelist's house. It was more luxurious than anything she'd ever imagined. After a few minutes of chatting with him, the old woman finally spoke up. I was going to will my property to you when I die, but now I'm not so sure. After seeing your house, I think you're spending too much money on yourself. The televangelist, with a gleaming eye, smile, replied, all these wonderful things were bought for God's glory. You wouldn't expect him to live in a barn, would you? That's exactly what Christians believe. That's what we believe. The incarnate God born in a barn. And because God was willing to humble himself that way, humanity itself was elevated, as was women. As Mary sang, he has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has the rich away empty. I don't know if you noticed a particular item in the news some time back. It occurred on Cyprus. The island in the Mediterranean that is divided between the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots. Ever since the Turks invaded Cyprus in 1974, the Turkish and Greek Cypriot people have been bitter enemies and still are. Today, Cyprus is still split into two factions. The north of Cyprus is controlled by the Turkish Cypriots, and the south of Cyprus is controlled by the Greek Cypriots. The original citizens actually of Cyprus, Greeks. But recently, the two communities came together in a stunning show of cooperation for a good cause. It seems that a 5-year-old Turkish child was diagnosed with leukemia. Doctors said their only hope is a bone marrow transplant. Over 500 donors from both the north and the south of Cyprus came together to donate blood in the hopes of finding a marrow donor. 500, both sides, all because of a child. Of course, that was not the first time that a small child was brought people together either. In Bethlehem of Judea was born a child whose primary purpose was to bring people together with one another and with God. That baby has affected the lives of millions of people on earth. More than 1 billion people call him Lord. Who could possibly imagine such a phenomenon if you think about it? It's not based on logic or philosophy or science. As important as these disciplines are to human life, it's based on simple faith. It comes from the heart as much as from the head. It's a declaration that we live in a God-invaded world, you and I. It's a fiction that love and light came down at first Christmas to bring hope and joy to the human condition. That's what we believe. That's what I believe. Final story. Mary Ann O'Rourke was feeling down one year, Christmas time. She faced the joy of Christmas with a heart full of disappointment and cynicism. She was just down, you know what I mean. She found a few minutes of peace by stopping to view a nativity scene on the front steps of the local church. But the peace was soon interrupted by a homeless woman nearby who was screaming and cursing. Once again, Mary Ann's Christmas spirit disappeared. A few days later, Mary Ann was passing by the same church when she discovered that the figure of the Christ child was missing from the nativity scene. Mary Ann wondered, who in the world could do such a thing? This only confirmed her cynicism. But as she turned the corner, she saw something that made her catch her breath. It was the homeless woman. She was holding the Christ figurine in her arms. The old lady wrapped her own dirty blanket lovingly around the figurine. And as she rocked the Christ child, she sang softly to it, Silent Night, Holy Night. Mary Ann O'Rourke wrote, I knew without a doubt that the spirit of Christ child had never really been missing at all. It might be where I least expected it, but it was never far away. It's never far away, folks. It's as close as opening our hearts to the purity and love of the Christ child. This is to affirm once again that Christmas elevates us all of us. It shows us that God has come into our world, bringing grace and peace and hope to everyone who believes. Those of us who call ourselves Christian. Amen. Hymn number 192, please stand.